4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
The storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. That beginning, I had my mic muted a little bit there, but we are back tonight with a special episode for everybody. And then the funny thing is we're actually going to be doing an episode kind of like what we're going to call School's Out Forever Redux. And I'm going to call it Redux because that's my favorite thing, other than another word or another saying we're going to get into in a minute. But I thought it would be fun to kind of go back and look at some of the educational issues that we've had with Betsy Devos and the federal office there, and kind of look at what did we talk about over almost 100 episodes ago. So this, Hannah can back me up. This goes back to episode 120, I believe, correct?
Yeah, this is 120. This is kind of one of those things where we're kind of thinking back to when Betsy got in, when Trump got his nominees in and started the reform that she wanted to do and what we thought they were going to start doing in the education system. We're 3 years in, and we're starting to see some of the repercussions and the ripples from that butterfly effect. And we're kind of, I guess we're going to analyze some of those things because I'm in a new state now. Betsy is her perspective is really comfortable here in Ohio, and she's been fighting in Michigan for a long time. West Michigan likes what she has to do, but nationally, we're seeing some interesting things happening. So I think this is gonna be a cool conversation. I'm assuming we're probably all gonna be relatively on the same side as far as what we think she is and how bad it is, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah, you never know. So we're going to open up with a little bit of sad news tonight, and again, I think that, I want to preface this by saying I don't typically want to mourn a bunch of celebrities, but I think this is kind of an important one because I think it kind of touches home a little bit. So we're going to quickly go over what happened Sunday morning. So on Sunday, if you have not heard, Kobe Bryant was killed in a a helicopter crash with some other people. As of the recording of this episode, they have not officially listed out everybody that's been dead, but the rumor is at least one of his daughters was also killed. And I think one of the big discussions here, right, is not so much should we be mourning, but at the exact same time, this is pretty big to some extent, right? I mean, he was a pretty big national player. We may not have liked basketball, not like some of the other stuff that goes along with it, but at the exact same time, he's still a human, right? With a family, with kids that he's left, behind. And while they work through investigating this whole, scenario, I think it's important that we at least remember the family during this time. And if you read through, and I only posted one of the links just in case anybody hadn't heard, because it's pretty big news. I'm sure most people have. But one of the big things in one of them is, one of the articles was people are going and buying memorabilia. And it's like, why is this news? Who cares? If you're capitalizing on somebody's death, shame on you. That's all I got to say.
Well, his gear is a regular thing. I mean, Kobe gear is still super popular. He's one of the greatest players ever lived all time. I mean, without question, he's up there with the greats, but also he does have a mixed history, a checkered history. There's rape allegations and those kind of things. So, he's not this saint of, patron happiness and amazingness. His family obviously didn't do the things that he's alleged to have done. So, they are obviously innocent of those types of things. And it's sad to see a young girl pass away if his daughter. I didn't think it was a rumor. I thought it was relatively confirmed, but because I think they were flying to a basketball training camp or something is what I had read. So I don't know, one of those things. But also, at some point, somewhere in this country today, a mother died giving birth because she didn't have the same adequate child care and health care for her system. Somewhere, a father kisses kids goodbye when he drove to work and got hit by a drunk driver in this country. Like, there are all kinds of these things that happen. Like, I try not to blow it too much out of proportion. Everybody knows it, so name recognition is important, but it's a sad thing, and it's an unfortunate thing. But you know, I try to keep perspective on giving famous people more than you know, anyone else would get if I read a story about something sad happening.
I'm glad to know that you would mourn my loss at least as much as you've mourned Kobe's.
I would pour the same amount for my homies as I would for the Kobe's. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things. I think about the things that you see and hear all the time, and it kind of gives perspective to these, you know, media headline events.
Anybody else want to reflect before we move on?
Just for me as a parent, it's you know, my worst fear is losing a child, and then as a married couple, it'd be losing your spouse and a child. That's about all I can really say. Is like, it's everyone's worst nightmare. So, and like Chris was saying, it happened 7 times today already. You know what I mean? Like, on average, 7 people die of a suicide or an overdose today.
Yeah.
Because of poor mental health. I think that's something we should bring up because we are covering mental health today. So,
yeah. Well, and that kind of goes into the discussion, you know, that we want to have a little bit with public school funding, right? And the discussing things Trump has allowed to happen in his cabinet. And this kind of talks a little bit, you know, to your point, Boyce, is that if we don't take care of our own house, these things continue to happen, right? And how do we maximize, or, you know, minimize the effects of that are going on? And we don't know what happened with the helicopter crash. You know, in my world, the first thing I think of, right, is I got to get on a plane tomorrow. You know, tomorrow morning at 5:30 in the morning, I got to be on a plane.
Dude,
you know?
I would be hugging my family if I was in your boats. I would.
Yeah.
Although that is the safest way to travel. So, I mean, that should make you feel a little bit better.
It is technically, you are 100% correct.
Yeah, no, I know it. The thing is just like, it's such a long way down. That's the thing that freaks people out.
It is.
Which is weird because, I guess when the adrenaline rush is going on and all of that, you don't tend to think about, well, at least it's not going to hurt when I hit the ground because it's going to happen so fast I won't even have time to blink. You know, I mean, you can at least take solace in that if you want to add a little bit of morbidity to it. A morbid comfort, if you will.
Thanks there, buddy.
Just doing my part.
I feel confident.
All right. Pitter patter, buddy. Pitter patter.
Let's get at her.
Yeah. So speaking of which, and before we get into the next segment, we'll do a little bit of humor just because. So I don't remember, buddy. Do you remember the episode it was where we talked about this? But we did a segment, and I'll have to look this up. And I shame on me for not doing it, but we talked a little bit about this show called Letterkenny.
Yes, I don't know which episode either, but it was definitely one of the ones before this one.
It was definitely so. It was, I believe, it was in the middle of July, and I'll look it back up. But we did this whole thing when Buddy was giving us some cool Canadian segments, and if you have not seen Letterkenny, you honestly should go out and look at it. And it's kind of funny because does anybody like the Trailer Park Boys?
I tried a little bit. I mean, the first season was pretty cool. I just found myself drifting off. Like, I talk about shows on here, like a show that I find cool, but it just doesn't catch my attention to keep me going for all of the seasons. But like, I like Bubbles. I thought the show was cool with the always with the Captain and Coke in hand and all that stuff. Like, it's good stuff.
Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of Trailer Park Boys, honestly, at all. Like, I watched a couple episodes, thought it was kind of dumb. I'm sure there's some comedy aspect in it that I'm missing. You know, I'm not from a trailer park, so maybe that's part of it, right? You know, like, I've never had to live one. So
those are my people.
I lived across the street from them, and so
well, that's part of the connection for Letterkenny too. Is like, part of what makes those shows funny, Trailer Park Boys included, is having some kind of connection in your personal life of it. Like if you can laugh at a joke because it's an inside joke that you remember when you were in that environment, it makes it way better because you've just been seen by the directors, by the people, right? You know, like, oh, they know my
It validates
they know my
you.
joke. Yeah. And so those kinds of things. So people like to gravitate towards stuff that they know.
It's like me when I hear, you know, jokes about where they're renaming teams from the NHL, and I out of nowhere hear somebody making fun of the Flames, and I go, "Oh my God, somebody remembers we exist."
Yeah. What you got up right now, Chris, this is the first one that I ever saw from Letterkenny.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, good old Wayne.
I think you better come in my. I mean, you better come up.
I think you better come say that to his face, you fucking hicks.
Nice execution. You're doing terrific.
Well, I think we just hit the explicit tag.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
It wasn't you. It wasn't you, buddy. Yeah, that's true.
It's just something that I brought to the show.
Treasure trail.
What's up with your fucking body hair, big
All right.
shoots? You look like a
You're right.
12-year-old Dutch
All right.
girl.
So for anybody else that's watching this before we get banned on Facebook, that is Letterkenny. So if you had not seen that show, I think it's absolutely hilarious. And I don't care what anybody. I love this show. I have been binging it while I've been in Texas. Essentially every night when I'm done, eat everything, go back to the hotel, just click it on, stick it on the TV, and I watch it every night.
I
And I
figured
think
out what it is.
I'm
With
into
a
like
little
the third season now.
Oh God, with a little squirrely dandelion.
Oh yes, almost there. and that's the best. And maybe I relate to that a little bit more because I worked on a farm, you know, and I worked at a farmer's market for I don't know, like 6-7 years. So maybe this fits a little bit more. And I'm from, you know, when I moved up to Michigan, I lived in Hudsonville, and what's in Hudsonville? Farm country, right? You know, so
Oh jeez.
you know, maybe this is a little bit more at home. But the comedy difference between Trailer Park Boys and this is Trailer Park Boys goes out of its way to be like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's what it reminds me of, right? It always is going to some big extreme, some huge topic, you know, where they want to like do a big shock value. Letterkenny is just, I mean, the shockingiest thing that they have is the gay pastor that nobody wants to be like, have you molested the children yet or not? Really, that's like the one question I have this whole bloody like 3 seasons. Like, are they going to acknowledge this? Or is he just going to admit he's never molested a child?
Basically for me, Letterkenny is short form comedy. Like it's short form. Like those are fast, rapid jokes. And Trailer Park Boys is long drawn out sketch. Like those are full on scenes that they do. And Letterkenny is just like bang, 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 bang. Like the way I was thinking about it when after you guys were talking and it's talking it up. I watched a couple of them, and I figured out what I think it is. Letterkenny is Canada's version of early Guy Ritchie movies. Just fast, impactful dialogue, slamming you with funny things here and there when you're not ready for it. It's like just quick dialogue. If you like really fast dialogue, it's too fast for caption. It's too fast for closed captions. I am a minute and a half behind all of the funny things because I'm reading the stuff at the bottom because I can't understand those weird Canadian lips. They don't move right.
All right. Well, pitter patter there, buddy. Pitter patter.
Just one last thing though, is the one thing that I really appreciate is the fact that yes, they're parodying like small town living, but they're also showing a lot of as Hansel was saying there, the whole the quick wit. But one of my favorite jokes that they did, it was they completely committed to doing this line by line, a bunch of alliteration jokes going through each and every letter of the alphabet. And like halfway through, I'm sitting there, I'm like, are they gonna go through with this? They got to the very end, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, this is just brilliant. Like the commitment to the bit in its entirety just completely amazed me. I had to rewatch it because I was like, I missed so many of those jokes. I was just in utter awe.
Well, or like the one joke where Squirrely Dan always says, that's what I like about you, Katie. And she's like, is that really what you like about it? That's like the most like long running joke of that whole show. And then like finally in season 3, like one of them, she was like, oh yeah, you're right. That is. And then it's like, you got to take it down 1% there. Come on, Squirrely Dan. Got to take it down 1%.
Let's take it down 15 to 20% there, Squirrely Dan.
Yeah.
Oh, look. Look at you, ceiling.
There we go. Anyway, so if you have not seen Letterkenny, there's our Tangent Cast 2.0 for the new year.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's move on to an actual topic for the show. For the first one that I wanted to go through was charter school, because that's the way I pronounce it. Trouble, right?
It sounds like a venereal disease. You've got charter school.
It kind of does a little bit, to be honest with you. But NPR had an article, right, that came out. I believe it was about a month ago. And they talk about Michigan charter schools got millions in taxpayer money for schools that never open. Now, anybody listening to the show would probably listen to us and we would go, it's not very uncommon that this might have happened. But if you sit here and look at the dollar amount, $7.7 million, that's kind of a shock, right? Why would $7.7 million get allocated to charter schools just to disappear? So has anybody else heard about this? Is this the first time anybody is hearing about this?
No, I've heard it before plenty of times, especially in Michigan with Betsy Devos. It's there. It's pathetic.
Yeah, some of the American secular media that I take in, they've talked a fair bit about Devos and her commitment to charter schools and her absolute detesting of public school, because why would you want people to go to public school when that might make them too smart to be a good workforce?
Exactly. So there is a total of 257 charter schools in Michigan receiving money from the federal program. 72 of those never opened. No other state had that many unopened charter schools receive money from this program. So now, and this is a point that I think a lot of people miss, right? When we talk about these things, a lot of people are like, well, you guys are very biased. You're on the far left, yada, yada, yada. Where's my libertarian friends coming in here, right? Where's the libertarian standing up and saying, I disagree with this too? And maybe they don't want to vote, liberal, but they obviously see what they got out of Trump. And for anybody to throw away a vote or to vote, for the Republican, it just seems illogical to me, because this should be something that if we're looking to clean up and shore up where our tax dollars go, there it is. $7.7 million. I don't know. I know that can help fund the roads. Right? That can help bring more art programs or more home ec type programs to schools. And yet here we are watching it disappearing.
I would say that like $7.7 million, when you're talking about like state budgets, when you're talking about city budgets, even that is not really that much money. I mean, we're getting a couple of industrial buildings can be $1 million, $1.5 million. I mean, there's nothing to that $7 million. But if you take $7 million, $47 million, that starts to turn into the entire budgets of tons of schools like that. So like the amount of money that we put into our school systems, the public school systems, like a few $1 million makes a big difference when it comes to spreading it around. So like one of the things that like funding the roads and all that kind of stuff, you hear about these programs, $200-300 million programs that are just like, what's $7 million added to that or taken away from that? But like when you start throwing numbers around in the education system, like a few $1 million makes a big difference. And when you get up to $47-50 million, like you're changing an entire state's education system. And so like that's one of the reasons why this is a big deal, is because it really does change what can be done. If you look at the number of charter schools, when we talked about this in the past for episode 120, it was basically it was either a Planet Money or a Freakonomics podcast that I listened to that brought up and I think it was Pennsylvania. There were a whole bunch of schools that were actually caught. They were a charter school during the day, and one of them was a nightclub at night. They cleared everything out and they turned it into a dance party, and they were serving alcohol and all this kinds of stuff. And a bunch of them were this one person or two people were people who were known for opening charter schools, and they would just take all the money, and they had a whole bunch of them going, and then they would just disappear, and they would take all that money with them and just disappear. Like all of those kinds of things are the things that you run into when you have non-transparent private systems going on. Like the idea of charter school is just saying, I'm going to give this state money to a private corporation, and they are going to do their job properly and educate
allegedly.
The students. But in the end, what you run into is what happens a lot of times with private corporations is that there will be people there that are simply there for the money. They are not there for the altruistic nature of the system. And so they're looking for an efficient way to make all kinds of money. and by not doing the services that would be best for the students, they make more. And these are the kinds of biases and problems that Tanner and I have always talked about with charter schools. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're just run by a absolute magnet of business, and they turn the education system into an efficient learning machine. I would argue that efficiency in education is never the goal. It's the output and the long-term gains that you get. But it depends on what kind of way you're looking at it. But in the end, we have seen less good from the money going to private schools than we have when we fund our public schools. I think it's a $7 for every dollar invested is what the public school system has. So if you invest $1 in the public school system, the return is $7 in the long term. Like that's a big return on your investment, but it takes 18 to 25 years to get that money back. And so that's a long-term investment that not a lot of politicians will want to make.
Well, and that exposes part of the big problem of when you approach things like education with a business model in mind, not the outcome. The outcome, of course, producing smarter people, better educated civilians who can basically go out and contribute not only more to society, but who can live happier, healthier lives, and ultimately kind of do more to carry society and further its benefits without being profit focused. And I think that's part of the problem with the free market, is that because there is such an emphasis on the idea of profit, that it really kind of causes everybody to lose sight of what's genuinely important.
Your bootstraps.
Yeah. But I think this brings to bear the obvious flaw in all of our stuff right here right now, is that schools are based upon profits. Just to pay their bills, they have to find, like, my kids got to pay $20 to park at school now.
Yeah,
that's like $20 a day.
$20. No, just $20. You get to park at the school that year.
You got to buy a parking pass.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Parking at my old
public school.
Yeah.
Oh,
tax money.
Sorry. What age group is the school?
High school. Because you got to be 16 to drive to school.
Okay. Sorry. I was just thinking, because my old university, their parking fees are just absolutely through the roof. It's my wife and I went to a concert at the university because her friend is the music director for the show that went on. Beautiful show. And I paid $10 for 2 hours on a Saturday night, where everywhere else in the city is free parking as long as it's public parking. No, there are lots. I still had to pay $10 or face like $150 ticket. And I'm like, what the crap are you doing with your lives?
But that's my thing, is we're either looking for profits or immediate short-term results, like Hannah was saying. You can't have either when that type of business model when you're talking about schools, jails, hospitals.
Right.
That's what that's what's screwing our budget up, is and our commitment is to the military industrial complex, not to the schools, our healthcare, or getting people out of prison and keep them out of prison. It's not to rehabilitate people or educate or keep people healthy. It's all about the profit margin or immediate results to justify their spending. And we put a $700 billion into the military instead. And they're squabbling over $7 million.
We talk about, like, people are just like, I love the idea that Trump would run this country like a business. Well, think about that for a minute. What happens when you run a country like a business? The profits are goals. GDP is a goal. Corporate growth and national GDP growth and country growth, economic growth. All of these things are metrics that can be measured. But when you think about internet, like national health care and taking care of poor people and making sure seniors have food, Meals on Wheels and things like that have been attacked in the last few years. Like when you think about those kinds of systems and you hear, Meals on Wheels feeding poor senior citizens who are retired and just can't make it work anymore. This is a program that loses money a lot of times, and it's also strapped a lot of times. There's people that just can't cover it. When I think of a profit margin, and I think of business case for Meals on Wheels, it's not going to be the altruistic nature of it is not going to be a profitable thing. But can you measure the benefit for those people that get these funds? This program loses money, but can you measure them having a quality of life that's a little bit better and making that, the end of their life? Like, is there a way you can measure that in a in a corporate setting, in a capitalistic setting, you cannot measure that kind of happiness, that kind of betterment of life. And so like this is one of those things that we always look at for whether or not, you know, the altruistic nature of government needs to be profitable and efficient. No, that's actually not the case. It needs to be inefficient, because efficient governments take over. They take over things and they make your freedoms disappear. And profitable governments don't give that money back to the people, where it's expensive, where it takes 30 years to get your money back. And schools are the same way. I mean, this is just a change, I would say a libertarian change, like Chris was saying earlier. Like, this is a libertarian change in this country, back to, you know, the Great Depression era, when we wanted to tariff the hell out of everybody, and then even into the isolation area before the world wars, is like make America great again, you know, or America is great. We don't want to be dealing with anybody else's mess because it's expensive, it's difficult, but sometimes the right thing to do is the expensive and messy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think here one of the sad things, and this is really a sad thing here, is that there is programs out there that are looking to try and change this. And the argument for a more conservative government, to some extent, if it provides high amounts of regulations, makes sense. I mean, I understand why people get pissed off and they say, hey, why the heck are we spending 40 million and 7.7 million of it is going to crooks? I get it. 100%. I get it. And you know what the sad thing is? The lady, Cassandra Ulrich, she's a Democrat. She's the one that oversees all this stuff, and she's fucking it up. Right? There you go. I guess I get explicit tag.
Yeah, there you go.
But
yay, Tan.
But that's the thing here is we sit here and we talk about these things, and we sit around and we get to go to vote, but we're not holding these people accountable. Like, to me, I swear we should go after and figure out how do we take her out of her job, or go hold her accountable for what she's supposed to do. And this is why I understand the libertarian point of view, where they wanted to say, hey, if we just didn't have all this federal funding, you wouldn't have this issue. I get it. 100%. I don't agree that we should start making all these cuts, and I don't agree with the libertarian viewpoint, but I get it, because this is disgusting money that's going away. And, you know, when luckily Michigan lost, 7.7 million. If you scroll down to the bottom of the article, 500 million in federal money have been spent on charter school programs that are no longer open. 500 million. So at least,
but they're too big to fail. Wait,
at least we're under at least we're under 10%, right? We're not even in the 10% margin here of this of all the school losses. But how many states are there that can receive this? How many states are there, right?
Well, that's what I was thinking about for Ohio that I'm in right now, is that WCPN, NPR in Cleveland. Okay, I didn't realize how nice it is to have an NPR station in a big city. Holy moly. It is so nice. Like, Grand Rapids NPR is pretty good. WCPN in Cleveland's got a bunch of money. They got a bunch of donors. They have a nice, and it's awesome. It's a really great station. And there's one of the links that is added on here is that the promise and peril of school vouchers. And so the school vouchers is the way that Ohio went. And this is what they do a lot of times for money that indirectly goes to private schools. So they essentially want to fund private schools, but they don't want that money to be directly funded through state legislation or any of that kind of thing. So they give you a voucher that you can choose the school you want to do. It's kind of like school of choice in Michigan, but it's a little different in the fact that it allows you to take that tax money and funnel it into a private school, which is also a religious school.
Right.
So that exemption is not allowed in Michigan, as far as I know. Charter schools have to be secular and private, but they cannot, as far as I know, be directly devotional. And one of the things in this article, they're talking about that money and who is benefiting here. So there's like all these vouchers allow all of these people who are in these areas that are considered failing schools to take their tax money and put it somewhere where they're gonna, and then get into a school that they think is going to benefit their family, their sons, their daughters, or whatever. And one of the questions they were asking is, you know, well, what counts as a failing school? And they recently, with the legislation, opened up what makes a failing school, like a school that has one building or one part of its campus that is not doing well. That can make that school a failing school. And so there is a direct competition with public schooling and like whether or not they're getting listed as a failing school, even though they're doing just fine. And maybe they don't have some test grades good in a couple of the classes, but like it's draining all of this money out of these really good, large private schools that help tons and tons of people. And so 5 or 6, 10, 20, 30, 40 people are leaving these schools and taking these big chunks of money with them. And it's really affecting the budgets of these big schools. And they're having a hard time keeping their buildings updated, it's like in Detroit when all the gym floors are all warped and destroyed. Like they're seeing this money flow out of the public sector and into the private sector, which is exactly what people like Betsy Devos want. They essentially want to drain or strain, cause a drought to public funded systems, so that the public funded systems look like they're failing, not by any merit of their own, but because they've been essentially strapped for funding. It's like when they look at the Medicare and the Obamacare and all that kind of stuff, the Republicans are trying their best to defund everything they can, because if it's defunded, then it'll start failing. And then they can point saying, see, that socialist program fails. And like, that's what they're trying to do in Ohio. And this NPR article was so nice to hear all these people in these schools saying, you know what, I'm staying in this school. They say it's failing. It's great. There's nothing wrong with this school. And in the schools that I chose, there's a couple of areas in my area, schools in my area that are like this. And it's like, it's crazy that this was one of the segments that we were doing, because I was just driving to work and I was just getting madder and madder in my 22-minute drive to work. And it's just frustrating as heck to see that like Ohio is just brutal when it comes to this. And this is the kind of stuff that Michigan has coming soon. They do. It's on its way, because as soon as you start allowing vouchers and that money going into your charters and private schools, this is what you're going to get. All your public schools are going to start failing. Mm-hmm. And if they're not failing, they'll be told they're failing, and it'll just make it worse.
Well, yeah, because they're not meeting specific standards about, forcing kids down a set path instead of, expanding and making education less about, memorization and facts and more about critical thinking and actually, learning to analyze and look at the government and be like, hey, wait a second, I don't agree with what you're doing here because that's not in my best interests. There was an argument that I had on Twitter the other day where somebody was like, oh, Albertans are stupid. I'm like, stop it. Those are my people. I might disagree with most of them on most everything. However, here's the problem, is that they've been led by a conservative government for over 4 decades who had control over pretty much everything in this damn province, and they gutted healthcare, they gutted our education, and they made it look like public education wasn't doing very well. And to be fair, public education has really failed a lot of people, as I've had to come to realize in my 20s and now 30s.
Yeah.
So they're not so much acting against their own best interests out of spite or anything. It's because that's literally how they were raised, that's who they were told to be. And while sure there should be some individual accountability, especially if you take the world from their view, that question things and all of that, but that's how they were raised, that's who they were taught to be. And unfortunately the system has failed them because it was led by horrible people who cared more about profit than the people and uplifting society.
Yeah. And that's funny, because when you go back to this article, the one that Hannah was talking about, they talk about in Indiana, so that's the big one, right? 3% of students statewide are enrolled in that scholarship program, right? And so let's talk about that a little bit. I'm going to move the gears just a tiny bit and say, okay, hey, fine. Vouchers exist. People get to use taxpayer money, we'll call it, right, to be able to go to the school that they want. Now, here's the deal, though. Do we as a group, and we can go like a round table, do we feel that giving people that choice is beneficial in the long run to growing our society? And I'll preface that by saying, what if we were to say, okay, everybody has to have a specific set of rules and guidelines that they get. You can't be a homeschool parent. You don't get the money as a homeschool parent. Right. So we just say that it has to be an actual public education. And we could discuss the homeschool thing and whether they should get money later on. But to begin with, we say you have to have this set, requirement. We can then also say that the school has to meet federal guidelines for teaching, such as like core math programs, core science programs. And if you post, and this is where I would say, if you post anything or you teach anything that detracts from that, you lose your funding. Do we feel then that allowing this choice to people to take their taxpayer money and spend it where they want is a benefit? And we'll start with Boyce. Boyce has been kind of quiet, so I'm gonna pick on Boyce a little bit and ask him his opinion.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. You want to have choice, you really do, but we as a society need to have a little, like Chris was saying earlier, is more altruism when it comes to this type of stuff. Is we have to help everyone, no matter what their demographics are, where they live. If you live in Detroit or Cleveland or in any other failing, quote unquote, failing school system that is not being properly funded because of schools of choice, like here in Benton Harbor, Michigan, where I think they have 3 buses of kids that get on a bus and they go to a different school system. And so that means there's money out of their pockets for that school, and it fails quicker. It goes bankrupt real quick, and the state's trying to take over that whole school district. Then they can have control. And Betsy Devos is over there with her little fingers, diddling. And so to me, of course, everybody wants the shiny new toy of choice when it comes to schooling, but we have to have a commitment here. We got to commit to educating people, and I think that we need to commit to, like Buddy was saying, it shouldn't be about standardized testings. I feel like the teachers are just they're teaching to take a test, and that's it. And like you guys were saying, he was saying earlier, teach them how to think, how to research, more critical thinking, and stay in the real world. Science, math.
But I think I'm going to cut you out there. I think you're avoiding the question. I mean, do you think that a voucher program could work if we set specific standards? I mean, do you think that's a benefit to society?
Any program can work if you put the right standards in place. Just how do we frame it? And what parameters we put on that, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I never thought about that, but it's nice to have a choice. But I think you abandon a whole neighborhood, then the haves leave the neighborhood, and the have-nots don't have that flexibility to choose a better school. They're stuck at home. They don't have a car. Their mom's at work, and they're screwed. That's not fair.
Because the next question I have then, and I'm going to go back to you, boys. I'm going to pick on you a little bit. I'm not picking on you. Well, you know what I mean. So, the next question is okay, hey, so fine. If we have standards, right? If we have standards that all schools are, what's the point of having a bunch of private schools that can receive vouchers when they are held to the same standard as a public school? Why would we allow money to funnel into that school versus just not letting it stay in the public school?
No, I don't think they should, period. Taxpayers go to fucking public schools. Simple. Private schools can kiss my private ass.
And that's
how I look at it. They don't have the same standards when it comes to the teachers. 'Cause we have a private school here. I could be a teacher at this private school as long as I jump through their hoops. You don't have to have an education to be a teacher at this Lake Michigan Catholic bullshit. Where you just got to teach the Bible one class a day, and you can be a teacher. And that's taxpayer voucher money moving. If you allow this program, that school's going to explode. And I don't like that. And you're abandoning other neighborhoods that have people that have no choices. There's a school of choice on paper, but if you don't have the means to go to a better school, then you're just being left behind, further behind.
So my perspective on this one is that having private schools does essentially erode our society. It erodes the nature of our social contract. Our social contract itself, what we are as citizens, is that we have all decided. In some cases, you can leave if you wish, but you're born in and you get to be citizens in most cases. But if you are in our society, you're a citizen in our society. You pay taxes. You are part of the system. And insofar as being a citizen, you pay the taxes. You're part of everything. Part of that is taking care of the people who are a little bit lower on the scale. That's the way this country is set up. And the schooling should be the same way. So if you live in a geographic area and there's a public school designated for that geographic area, and there's a diverse group of people who live in said area. My area where I live is a great example of that. There are a whole bunch of apartment complexes with tons of units. I mean, huge spaces. And then there are middle-class houses, suburbs scattered about. And then there are some really, really nice, I don't know what chateau, areas that, like, these people have money, and all three of those areas are in the public school system that I currently live in. If you're in our society and you're accepting the benefits of the roads, the government, everything that we get, being citizens, you don't get to pick and choose how your taxes are dispersed. It's part of the voting system. It's part of the way everything is. So if you are an education system, if you're a young person, you go into the public education system that we all fund money into, because you always hear that an individual doesn't raise a child, the city or the neighborhood, the town,
The village.
the village. Everything is all of those kinds of things. That is the nature of what Locke and what Hobbes had in the state of nature and the idea of a social contract. The people who were the philosophical leaders for the people who founded this country, like that idea, that communal idea, having representation in government that made the big decisions. But the people who are here, we're all in the same group. We're all part of the same club. That's part of the thing. You can have your religious groups, you can religious institutions, but they have to be separate from the state. And so you can have your churches and your after school activities and all that kind of stuff. But the education system should be a public education system. I don't think private schools should exist, and I would be fine with that as long as if they did, it is purely your disposable income that pays for that. And that's on top of the tax money and everything that you pay for. So, like, I'm assuming that's probably pretty close to what Tanner would think, but I don't know about I don't know what Buddy thinks on that, because he's kind of in a country that has a little bit more of the socialized nature to it. But like, I personally think that that's the way it should be. And like, I would have no issue if we just had no charter schools in the high school level. And if you want to do a private school, it's like no corporate schools. If you want to do a private school, there's no tax money that's going away from that. You have the option to do the public school. If you want to go somewhere else, that is entirely on you. But you don't get to skip out on the money that everybody else puts into this system. That is where I would be. I personally think that if everybody's in the same pool, everybody's drawing from that same pool, that is the altruistic nature, the expensive way that we we invest in the future in this country. And I think that's the best way to go.
And before we, and Buddy, I'll give you a chance to speak. Sorry, I don't disagree. I want to hear the Canadians' perspective, right?
I do too.
To see what the difference is. But I want to make a quick comment here, right? So if you scroll down a little bit farther in the article, right, and you're going back into
the Ohio one.
Yeah, okay. In the Ohio one. Yep. If you scroll, because that one's a lot more in depth than the original one. If you go down a little bit and you look at it, they talk about one of these private schools, right? And the reason this lady likes to send her daughter here is because the intimacy of the school is 1/10 the size of the public school. It has a higher rating. She loves the fact that they're putting emphasis on service work and college completion and partnering with local businesses and nonprofits to get students real world work experience, right? All those things are amazing. Great things. The annual tuition is in excess of $13,000, which is out of reach. And I would admit, in my world, it's out of reach too. Like that's well over what I could afford to send my kid to school for, right? But with these vouchers in a unique work study program, they will be able to enroll her for $20 a month. So if you're in school 9 months a year, what's that cost?
$180.
Yeah. So $180 instead of $13,000, right?
Yeah.
And what I want to talk about here real quick, or I want to make a point of real quick, is the fact that if those schools have these better options, and the reason these schools succeed, and this is just me speculating here, if the reason these schools are succeeding is because of the fact that they have some more wealthy individuals who are donating money to the schools to give them more resources to let this happen. Yeah. What if all those people went to a public school, and what if those people still donated to the school for those specific programs in a public school?
Yeah, we added all those resources all into one place, like I was saying. Like everybody put their money into one place, the schools would be great everywhere.
I get the point. You want to go to a private school, you want to be able to send your kid where you want. And I do get the religious thing. I do get it. I do. As a skeptic and an atheist, I don't agree with it, but I do get that. You know, my sister does that. My sister sends her young child to a specific Christian school, and they somehow come up with the money to pay for that. And you know what? I say, hey, fine. If that's your choice and your investment is there, good for you. But the big thing here for me would be is why not turn around and say, hey, let's have other people donate into the school and give the exact same stuff minus the religion to these public schools. You would have a higher turnout of participants in school. You wouldn't have people dropping out. You wouldn't have people worried that they got to go to work after school, you know, in their teens because their mom doesn't make enough to, you know, pay the bills. That happens all the time.
The big reason is the same reason that when all the kids leave the home nest and they go to college, they go to the big public university and they come back and say, "Ma, Dad, some of them stories about that big book you giving me, that don't make no sense no more." And they want to control that mind. They want to control all those little things. Private schools is just another form of social control. You can control them for a little bit longer. You can control how those brain passageways are created for a little bit longer. And the longer someone's in there, the investment fallacy gets in there. I've been in this life for so long. How can I leave? You know, this is the entirety of my individuality. Who I am. How could I leave? And you know, these are all proven things that if you control the mind a little bit longer, you can control where it ends up. Public schools are a place where, you know, let's face it, it's a diverse culture that has a diverse area of input and philosophy, and there would be, I guarantee you, less devout, intensely fundamentally religious people if the public school systems were allowed to flourish and private school systems were restricted in some way. Like this is something they know, and this is something that, and inversely the other is true. The stronger the private schools are, the stronger your fundamental belief system is in the community that you can control and keep going. So like this is their goal. This is the DeVos goal. She's a Christian Reformed West Michigander. And if you head over into that Ada Cascade area, Forest Hills area, you will see these gated communities of locked off, chopped off, hidden, whatever. And I mean, they specify, you know, they want to keep it very specific, and they want to control everything. And so like these are things that are goals, and the conservative community that's in charge right now, as far as our administration is concerned, this is the goal they have, and they're winning as far as being in charge right now. And
keep it white and delightsome.
But we're seeing the results of some of their actions. So I don't know. It's not really helping the school systems. It's definitely hurting the public systems. And that's what they want. They want that. They want to neuter the public school systems. And then they can point at it and say, this is failing. See, socialism is a failure. There's no benefit to it. We should all be corporatist.
It's like that. It's like that Eric Andre show meme where it's, you know,
that guy
certain person shoots somebody else. Why would they do this to themselves?
Yeah.
That's one of my
His show
favorite.
is insane. Like it is the most intense show out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, so buddy, what are your thoughts?
I am very random.
Yeah. What is the Queen's the Queen's Canada think of
Queen's Canada and soon to be home of the former, or the Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Oh, I am so sick of that mess.
Yeah,
right, we're not going to do that. Maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. I'm cutting that off.
So I'm
new.
I am. Yikes!
I'm saying let's not go there, bud.
I have. Excuse me. Oh wow! Hannah just pulled a knife on me. That's awkward. So my wife is a teacher in the Catholic public education system in Canada. It's a thing. We're not going to go down that thing either. I've got to see firsthand a little bit of what's goes on with the education system, and you know, as part of the census, lower socioeconomic status areas get less funding. So you're already seeing a lot fewer resources. So kids in those schools are less likely to be diagnosed or have learning disabilities made available, or they're not going to have adequate resources so teachers can give those students, you know, a little bit more attention if they need, or accommodate them a little better, because these teachers are vastly overworked. And I mean, while they do get paid well for the amount of work that they do, it's the dollars per hour ratio is really, really low.
Yeah.
Now, I do believe that there should be some freedom of choice, because I'm admittedly, the high school that I went to, it was very well known for its choir program, for its dance program, for its drama program, for its hockey program. I was none of those things, so I was a loser. I had very few friends. It was weird. I didn't fall into any of those groups. But for kids who do want to continue and pursue those beyond at grade 12 or whatever, as their post-secondary potentially into careers or whatever, I can understand a parent wanting to say, I'd like a school that's a little more tailored to helping my kids get to those goals, instead of me putting them through a generic public education system. And, we have to do all of the legwork, whereas the education system is assisting with that already. So I can understand having some specific variants, some school programs or specific schools that tailor more to students of specific needs, not just students who have special needs, but students who they're pursuing a more athletic career, they're pursuing more of the sciences, more the arts, this, that, or the other. I mean, so long as they're meeting specific standards, I don't see any reason why there can't be a good balance of that. But I loved your point. I had never thought about the whole private school system being a way of continuing to control and force your ideologies down your kids' throats. I had never thought about that. And I think that's an amazing way to think about it, because when you pay for education, that's a service industry, a serve us industry. So my dollar means I get to have a say in what you provide for me. Otherwise, I take my dollar and I go to somebody else who's going to provide what I want, who's going to give me a little more of what I want. So in private schools, they bend a lot more to, the specific interests of the people who are paying them the most. And that, to me, is a fatal flaw of the whole free market system, is because then basically you get to buy things, and it's not about, everybody's provided with a standard of education, and education that basically allows them to lift themselves up of the shackles of, being the what's the term, is the proletariat, rise to the proletariat. Yeah.
We must fight the bourgeoisie.
Down with the bourgeois. So an education that allows for that kind of freedom. I mean, yeah, sure, not everybody really wants to do much with their life in terms of their arts or their sports or their academics or whatever. They're people who are more okay with becoming a mechanic or workers, because these are things that we do need in society, because we want things in society. So it stands to reason that we'd be okay with people not really aspiring to be above, but we shouldn't be holding those people back either by saying, well, you only want to do that, so you don't deserve much. We should be saying you're a human, basic needs.
The skilled trades is an area that I know all of us can appreciate, and it's a lacking area when it comes to the education system, from the No Child Left Behind, thanks to George W. Right. Unfortunately, everybody doesn't need to go to college. You can be an electrician and make $90,000 a year. You can. I've seen it. I know these people. If you're and like, those kinds of things are incredibly important. If nobody takes the garbage out on the weekends, where does your garbage go? Oof. You know what I mean? Where does it go? You just take it to the end of your driveway and it just gets into a bigger pile, or do you have to take it somewhere? Like, these are the services that the state provides. These are skilled, trades positions where you do the things, and like, those positions should be well funded, and they should be, teachers are the exact same thing. That is a skill to teach people.
It's not a skill.
It's a skill. It's a
personality.
Yeah, it's everything. It's like the fact that when I look at someone measuring something with a ruler and I get angry when they're not doing it accurately. Like, these are all things that it comes, like, the way and who you are. Like, teachers are in societies all around the world. Japan, Germany, in different areas in Europe. If you look at the ones that are doing really, really well as far as the functionality and inequality, societies that think that doctors, teachers, lawyers, the professors, the smarter people that have a bunch of education, those are the people that you want to aspire to, as opposed to the United States. Like, we started off this show today talking about an athlete that's famous, whatever. Right. Like, if you look at what Americans spend their money on, it's not exactly. I just read something
he's
today.
He's famous because he's sports good.
Yeah. Well, like, I read something today that more people by tenfold go to public libraries than go to sporting events throughout the year in the United States. That's how important public libraries are. That's where we get our information. That's where we get our learning. You know, schools provide this service. A lot of times public libraries are attached to schools. Like those kinds of things are funded and they're incredibly important. You know, what we talk about and we concentrate on, you know, external things in this country. And I really like some countries, China right now is known to like bow down and give massive respect to educators in their country. This is a perspective that helps their country grow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they may be doing it in an authoritarian way, which is unfortunate, but in the end, like those are the things that help your country grow, is, you know, respecting the people that make it better for the next generation that's coming up.
That's a Texas size
10-4.
Good, buddy.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Dios mío.
Well, something else I wondered. What do you guys think about the idea of not having any more public funded sporting teams and just put it all into actual education and make all football, basketball, wrestling, baseball, make it all just club events or club sports?
Like professional stuff?
No, just like a club. Like when I was in high school, we didn't have a varsity soccer team, but they had a club team like AYSO. Or like for you, for baseball was your thing. They had the what do you call that? The like summer ball program, you know.
So you would pay a certain amount of money as like your tuition to play on the team, but in schools,
pay to play baseball, but just not affiliated with the school funding. Like instead of spending $400,000 on a new track, we could spend $400,000 on getting some goddamn materials in the hands of these teachers, so they don't have to come out of their own pocket to buy fucking crayons, you know?
That is a tough one.
Issue with that comes in the fact that, you know, it kind of flies a little bit in the face of government funded initiatives to help kids be healthier, because as technology improves, it's easier and easier and easier and easier to live a sedentary lifestyle where you don't even actually need to leave your house. And as we know, that it's not very likely that if you don't leave your house often, that you're in decent physical shape, that your physical health is well maintained, is well cared for, et cetera, et cetera. So the big red flag that I'm raising by, or was raised to me by what you were saying there, is just that I worry that it might have negative impacts on health. It might reduce the interest in athletic pursuits for kids. I mean, let's face it, for gym class is hell, right? Like gym class is just the absolute worst hell for most.
The greatest thing ever. I love gym class.
Shut up, you jock.
Oh my
I hated
gosh.
I love
it was the greatest thing ever. When I could throw the dodgeball at the slow kid, that was a good day. That was a good day.
That does make sense that you would think that.
But here's my thing, though. Despite all these things,
and then they would hit me with the dodgeball, and my hearing aid would be like, and they would gloat and enjoy
karma.
It too. But yeah.
But here's my thing, though. We put so much resources in athletic programs, yet we got the fattest goddamn country on the planet.
Right.
So you're
absolutely right.
It doesn't add up.
I think that's a strange.
It's focused more on the spectatorship, the blood sport, as opposed to the initiatives trying to get kids moving, trying to get kids interested in living a healthy, active lifestyle. Because let's face it, it's really easy for a lot of people to sit and spend 4 hours a day playing video games, because I've done that.
Well, I've seen there's a lot of psychological studies that say that the benefits for team sports and things like that, for growth and things.
Exactly.
So those are important. I do think that we do spend too much money on that,
yes.
Specifically in football. I think that is
football.
But yeah, so.
Yeah.
So where
I would say we should pump the brakes on that, because if we don't, that's a whole different rabbit hole. I agree with Boyce, though, and I think that should be relooked at, because if we could reallocate at least a percentage of that, I mean, for the amount of money that goes in, look at Alabama and the amount of money that goes into football down there.
Yeah, Nick Saban alone.
Yeah. In my opinion, if you just look at just that and just take one portion of that, you could probably redistribute quite a bit of money into the public sector to allow for other things. And I agree with that statement. So the next topic is public schools funding unraveling. And I wanted to have this conversation, and maybe Han and I just think too much alike because it's NPR all over the board tonight. But especially traveling, I listen to a lot of NPR because they have an app. I can download it. The Supreme Court
NPR
just heard.
Everything's good.
Exactly. Yeah. Last week, the Supreme Court just heard a major unraveling, could be headed to a major unraveling of public funding, school funding, right? And so we just talked about charter schools. And if you look at the statistics, they're losing money. If you look at the statistics, and Han and I did this episode, and I think it was about a year ago, we did an episode where we analyzed the schools and we actually analyzed the the percentages and the grade levels and stuff like that, right? And so we looked at, were they better than private or public schools? We looked at all of those different things. And when we did that, we came to the conclusion that overall public schools have better education systems in the long run for students than charter schools do. Now that's excluding the private school. That's just charter schools.
Yeah.
So this specific discussion here, we talk about we talk about a Supreme Court conservative majority that's going to or could invalidate a Montana state constitution that bars aid to religious schools, right? And the reason this is big is because this could be what screws everything over between the separation of church and state, right? And on this show, that's one of the big things that we've discussed. We've had this conversation more than one time. We've wanted to analyze and look at, what does that effect have on everybody else? And without that could be a big thing, right? So the Montana court said that the subsidy violated a state constitutional provision barring any state aid to religious schools, whether direct or indirect. And that was the discussion that happened from the Montana Supreme Court about tax subsidies for religious and non-religious private schools. So this kind of goes all the way back into our discussion, with the charter schools and all of that. We talk here is now they want to sit here and say, we're a Christian family and we want those values taught in our schools. Therefore, we should be able to get funding to these schools.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds crazy to me.
It's an age-old argument, and it's part of the chipping. So if you guys are familiar with Malcolm Gladwell, one of his really great books is called The Tipping Point. And what he did was he basically looked back in history to find tipping points, very specific times when we could actually tell, only with the historical view, only with 2020 hindsight can you see it. You can't see it when it's happening. It's impossible. There's too much information. But you can find a tipping point where something changed and it started a major change in the future. And everybody's been wondering, what's the next economic point for the next recession that's going to happen? We're 10, 11 years, 12 years into the current growth. We saw a spike in the last couple of years, and everybody's worried that there's going to be kind of a heroin or a cocaine withdrawal happening in the near future here, because when you overheat the economy, it usually has withdrawal of some kind, and usually that's a recession because just basic economics. Well, anyways, when it comes to these kinds of things with the public school funding, is that everybody's worried that this is going to be an issue where we're going to be looking at there's going to be a problem with where the money is going to be going, and is this going to be a tipping point that's going to change everything. In Michigan, I believe there was a school that had they were trying to use taxpayer money to build a brand new playground, and they were a Christian school, above and beyond, without a doubt, a non-transparent. We talked about this, and it was denied. It was something that was pushed down. That at the point at that time was considered to be like the forefront argument as to whether or not we can bring this tax money into religious schools. This is another example of that same exact fight, trying to find another little tiny place to do it, and eventually, when they finally find that that right key to pick the lock of the Supreme Court, will they be able to make it be a tipping point where they can start, hey, this is the precedent. The legal precedent has been created that will allow us in every state to apply this ruling to start funding money directly openly. So like we've been hearing, the idea of like our current administration is gangsterish and it's just ugly and it's brutal. I argue that that's been the case for a long time. Politics has been ugly. Now it's just visible. It's totally in the forefront. In the past, money has been slowly funneled into private schools, into Christian schools, into religious schools over the years. And this ruling, if they do make this change, would make that money, that funding, just completely and totally transparent in the future. This is just, we're allowed to do this now. We're going to do it. And that's the big change that they're worried about here, is that they will continue banging at this door. There's been abortion arguments that have been the same kind of thing. They keep throwing everything at the window until finally, they chip through. It's like the first couple episodes of The Witcher, right? When the dude can't keep that barrier up against the wall anymore, and he says that I'll hold out as long as I can hold out. It's the same thing. It's they'll hold out as long as the Constitution or the Supreme Court can hold out. And when they finally do change, that'll, hopefully, we can, our society, designed as it was with the separation of church and state and the separation of powers, can survive it. But we are really testing the boundaries of that right now. And I think this is just another example of them just testing it.
So I think we all are probably on the same page when it comes to, religious money and stuff like that in the system. But Hannah, I don't know. Do you think that this decision is going to create a big issue for us in the long run? I mean, if they allow this, is this honestly the unraveling of public school funding, or is it just another erosion in church and state separation?
Well, that's the thing. They're touting this as it would be the one. They're saying that this would allow them to put a lot of information in here. In the article, it says, and under a radical decision, it says the view that suggested in Wendy's case has potential for much broader public funding of parochial schools. Like that's this case apparently has a wider scope, and so in the language they're using for that. So in the Michigan case, it was for a playground. It was just the tax money is going to be used for a very specific thing. Is that allowed? And so in this case, it sounds more like, can money from the taxes go to a parochial school? It's very general, and having a more general language always gives the law way more power. And I think that's what they're arguing in this, is that it's going to just be a more radical decision. According to Justice Sonia Sotomayor, is if that does happen, what it does is it opens. If it's vague, it gives people way more room to start saying, "Well, this is a vague. This ruling was really open." It's like the interpretation of the Constitution. You always hear people saying like the Second Amendment. It's totally about my ability to hold 100,000 guns in my basement. It doesn't say that in there, but that's kind of the translation over the last couple decades. They've changed it to be that, instead of having a well-regulated militia that is designed essentially to a grouping of people in cities to resist a centralized government that's overusing its power. The Second Amendment has changed very dramatically in its interpretation over the years, and this kind of decision here would be one of those things. They say, whether or not it's the tipping point, like I said earlier, I don't know.
Fair enough. Well, I don't know. I think it's, like I said, I think it's disgusting if it happens. I'm going to hold out and wait. We'll touch probably back on this in the next month, is my guess. My guess is there'll be a decision reached in the next month. Maybe two. I don't know. So we'll come back to this. I don't think it's over. And like I said, even if it does expand the power a little bit, the bigger question I have is, will that really affect everybody else? And will everybody else honestly be able to start pushing those through? Because my guess is the ACLU, we're going to see the FFRF, we're going to see a couple other organizations kind of come into this saying, hey, hold on a second, we're going to throw some legal matters and we want to have this conversation. And I don't know 100%.
And the Satanic Temple. And
the Satanic Temple, yeah. And
the question is, can anything they do? So since the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, I mean, once that legal precedent has been set, like Roe v. Wade, man, like I don't care how many religious groups have legal groups that are trying to fight this. It's been decades and they've been fighting it. So like this is a big deal if the Supreme Court makes that decision.
I agree and I disagree, because I think the difference is that if they leave it broader, it allows for more challenges when unique cases come up. I think that's the difference, right? is the Roe v. versus Wade wasn't very broad. It was specific. It was driven. It had a specific set detailed purpose. This one, like you said earlier, is a little bit more broad. So I think this one, even if it gets through, yes. Will it be detrimental to some extent? Yes. Will it cost lots more taxpayer dollars? Yes.
It would flip the other direction. It would be we people like us would be making the challenges to try to overturn that legal precedent. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that's where the difference is, and I do think that I'm not going to say, hey, this is the unraveling, this is the end of all public school funding, but I will say that this is definitely a problem, and I'm hoping that Justice Roberts, who's the one who has not weighed in, will be a little bit more fair and not both for this.
We could hope.
We can hope. Yeah. Well, as much as we want to hope, our next segment before we get to the end of the show is the Chinook Winds of
You did
Canada.
that on purpose.
I'm sorry. I did not do that.
Chris is the K sound CH, so English is stupid. We've established this. Let's move on. Hello, Canada.
So good day, and sit down, you hosers. All right. All right, enough pretending I'm actually from Minnesota. So the topic of today, there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to bring this topic up. The first reason is because about a week and a half ago, I had a revelation that I was wrong about a previous notion that I had about what we in Calgary and Southern Alberta refer to as Chinooks. I don't know where I got this idea from, but I had it in my head that the Chinook wind phenomena was unique to two places in the world, Calgary and somewhere in Scotland, although in spite of never actually specifying where in Scotland, I never thought to actually sit and go, wait, was I right about that? Until about a week ago when I was at work and we were talking about it because we recently had a big one that came through, and I was talking about it at work, and then finally I was like, wait, I just want to confirm something here, exactly where the other place is. And then I found out, no, it happens in a lot of other places in the world.
I need to know what a Chinook is first.
We're getting there. We're getting there. I'm
okay.
So
don't leave me hanging on this. It's like, it happens all the places.
So I'm trying to live up to the skeptics part of the title of this podcast, Cellar Door Skeptics, by sitting here and saying, I was wrong. I fact checked myself, made a boo-boo, and it's okay because I learned. And that's something that I think is really important. And I think that's something that we really need to lead with is, there's shit that we're wrong about, and it's totes okay so long as you can recognize that you're wrong and you can be an adult and go, oh, well, what's right then? Oh, that's right. Okay, well, carry on. So I'm going to espouse some of my ignorance. So a week ago, we were in the middle of a cold snap. We were at the part where Celsius and Fahrenheit start to become really close friends.
Yeah, I heard it was zero, like it was equal.
It was about, during the daytime, it was about minus 22 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I thought minus 32.
And that was just the ambient air temperature with the winds.
31.
Roughly, yeah.
I know the translation is 9/5 plus 32. And so going back and forth, and so but that was 0-0. I heard it was like 0-0.
Yeah, pretty much. They were like right around the same. But with the wind, it was literally at the point where Celsius and Fahrenheit are the exact same, and that's minus awesome. 40. And that's what it felt like with the wind. And then overnight, it literally went from minus 30 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius. So that's a 32 degree shift in Celsius and about a 60 degrees shift in Fahrenheit. So big change. So the Chinook, it's a naturally occurring phenomena where strong, dry, warm winds blow through the prairies of southern Alberta during winters. Now a Chinook is part of a phenomena called foehn winds, and I'll get a little bit more into that, but I will say that I know them as Chinooks because that's what we call them regionally. There is actually a different name for them that occurs in each different regions. They have something different they refer to it as. It got its name, actually I'm not 100% sure where the name Chinook comes from. However, what I have learned is that the Blackfoot peoples, who I've talked about before, who lived in this region, the way they referred to it was the snow eater. Essentially, this is because, as I said, overnight we literally gained 32 degrees. We went from holy freeze your balls off to, oh, this is a nice spring day. And a foot of snow can melt in that time. So overnight, we saw a drastic change in temperature and all of that.
Oh wow! And a flood? Like,
no, thankfully, no. We
Okay.
we didn't have that much snow. We had a fair bit, but not enough that it quite went down that road. Thankfully. So as I said, it's part of this phenomenon called the Foehn winds. They're the dry, warm, downward winds that occur on a downward slope of a mountain range. Calgary happens to be rather close to the Rocky Mountains, so they're very common. We get the multiple. Every winter we'll go from -10 -15 to all of a sudden it's above freezing again, and that's in all Fahrenheit or Celsius, sorry, for you Americans. They're also they're essentially a rain shadow wind that happens when air that has dropped its moisture, aka rain precipitation, yet has maintained its heat and continues past the mountains. So how they happen is there are 4 factors that contribute to this effect. So the first one is condensation and precipitation. Essentially, the change of state of water from water vapor to liquid water, it releases energy. Chemistry, what was it? Third level, second level chemistry? I learned it in grade 12. And this warms the air, which counteracts the natural cooling as air rises, because the further away you get from the ground, the colder it kind of gets.
Yeah.
So the second factor we have here is the isentropic drawdown, which essentially warm air blocks the cooler air from getting past the mountains and is essentially pulled down the slope of the mountain. So you get, all of a sudden you'll have, it's going right over. So for the people who are watching, which is I think 3 of you, you can see my hand movements going over a mountain and then all of a sudden going down the slope of the mountain because it's pulled into the prairies in that area. So the third factor is mechanical mixing. And what this is the natural turbulence of the air. And it's caused by the mountains, which just basically, for lack of a better phraseology, fuck everything up.
They act
They
like a spoiler on the back of a car. So if you can imagine smoke blowing on the back of a car and then it gets all swirly after the car, that's what it looks like when wind blows over a mountain.
That's actually a good way of explaining it. What can happen here is that air can warm going down as opposed to normally warm air rising, as we see in a convection current, which is something we all know. So as I said, it kind of goes crazy and all over the place. So the last factor is radiative warming, and essentially the conditions that create rain shadows allow solar warming in these areas, in these cooler areas, to occur on that downward slope of the mountain. So the last little bit here. So some of the effects that happen, as I said, there's the drastic temperature shift. Blackfoot people called it the snow eater because you can lose upwards of a foot of snow in a day. But there's also a rapid shift in pressure that goes on, and migraines are very, very common. My wife included. I'm actually kind of amazed she wasn't rendered basically a vegetable for a few days because of how severe this Chinook was. I think I was the one that got a little bit of a headache from it. And then there's also my dad, who, because of his myriad of health issues and his sensitivity to changes in pressure, we usually, as a kid, we knew there was a Chinook coming 2 or 3 days before the news talked about it, which was kind of cool. Made me a little cool for about a minute in school. So, as I said, I was very wrong. I thought these occurred in 2 places, but even just on the brief Wikipedia, there's similar phenomena in South Africa called the Bergwind. In the Americas, there's the Brookings effect on the southwest coast of Oregon. Apparently, they also call it the Chetco effect. The Santa Ana winds of California, the Puelche wind of Chile, the Suetes wind on the west coast of Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia, Argentina. It even happens in Antarctica. So it happens in Asia, Oceania, very common in Europe, which is actually where the name Foehn comes from, is from, some European country.
Oh my god.
Is that the technical term?
That's phone is the more technical term for it. I'm just not sure which language it's derived from
Because say Latin. It's a big one.
I bet it is.
Well, there's an umlaut in it, so it's F-O with an umlaut, or F-O-E-H-N. So the umlaut over the O means that you pronounce it F-O-E-H. Yeah, fun fact that I don't know how many people knew that one. But so that's why I'm not. That's why I can't say Latin. It's because I don't think Latin has the umlaut.
I don't think so either. That sounds Germanic.
So sort of a Canadian segment, but also, I thought it was good for the skeptical nature of the show, because, sometimes we don't always get around to science and stuff.
I will say this is the closest thing to a engineering porn serenade that you've ever given me, Keith, and I really appreciated it.
Well, did you not listen to my segment on the Canada arm?
Oh man,
I was hoping you did that. I was hoping you would.
It's one of those things. Any area where you see a massive change in elevation and you see turbulent winds and heat changes and things like that, you're going to see these kinds of things. Then when you mention the Santa Ana winds, you're hitting mountains there. You're seeing mountains in Chile. Any area where you're seeing these changes, that's something that you're going to see. It's an awesome physical phenomenon. It's one of the great things we see about climate change is that science doesn't lie. It doesn't care what you think. It's always going to be the same. If you removed every single religious book from humanity, and in 100 years, every single scientific phenomena would be exactly the same, recorded everywhere on the planet. But every single new religious book would be completely different than all the old ones. And that's a great example there, where you're learning a little bit of science, and that's awesome. I apologize to all the other people who didn't know any of the isotropic words or anything like that, because those are fun words, but they're ugly things in class. So just if you run into it, I knew a couple people that did meteorology, and they loved it. They loved it. But
the
that was really
isotropic
cool.
word, I was like, I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I like it. It makes me sound smart.
It's pretty cool.
Fair enough. I don't know. It's cold in Canada, man. I think that's like the takeaway from this. It's cold as shit. It is always cold as shit, and we should be very careful.
But it's very predictable when you're going to see a 30-degree increase in temperature because of the whooshy whooshies over the big bumpy bumpies.
The whooshy whooshy. Is that a technical term too?
God, your kids must love listening to you tell them things about life.
Oh,
like, can you give us
every day when I get home from work, I sit down to eat dinner, and my daughter says, "Dad, tell me a story." I was like, "What do you want me to tell you a story about?" And they'll just, I tell her, I said, "I'll tell you a story about anything you can't see directly in front of you." Because like she'll be like, "Can you tell me a story about cups? Can you tell me a story about picture frames?" I was like, "No, anything you can't see directly in front of you." And then usually I'll have something, or it'll be just something I kind of jazz up a little bit. But it is really fun to just kind of improvise, like the improvisation classes that you always hear about comedians loving. Like if you can just on the fly just go with it, it'll actually. I told my daughter that once she gets old enough, and if she can start doing it now, but like if she can learn something during the day that I don't know when I get home and tell me, so like, "Daddy, do you know about this?" And if I say no, then she will get some kind of prize. I don't know what it is yet. It may be money, it may be something, but like if you can teach me something when I get home from work. Oh man. So if she can teach me the whooshy whooshies over the bumpy bumpies or whatever, like that would be, like if she can teach me something when I get home, I told her, I said, "If you can teach me something that I don't know, you'll get some kind of prize yet." I don't know. Maybe we'll have a poll on the site. Like what kind of gift or what kind of prize should the little one get if she can trick the deaf kid?
I have a
teach the
suggestion.
deaf kid. What do you think?
Let her practice her makeup tutorials. On Daddy Dearest.
Yeah, why not? I told her, I said, when you want to do you want to paint my fingernails or whatever, let's do this, but I'm gonna have a hard time explaining it to all the conservatives at work.
Yeah, you get used to it though.
I can't wait to hear your birds and the bees talk, and I hope that you will tell us before you tell the kids.
Oh yeah, that's a tough one.
Oh God.
We'll see. I'm probably gonna have to read along. I've got a book that's I think brain training up to 5 years old. And so it's a pretty cool book about like where you're at there, but I don't have any kind of like recommendations and stuff like that for like how to start and when to start those other conversations. We'll see how that goes.
Well, there you go, folks.
We be learning stuff.
We'd be learning stuff.
Yeah. So we're gonna end on an old school segment. We're gonna end on that old school stuff that I used to like to do.
10-4, good buddy. 10-4. That's a Texas size 10-4, buddy. And I suggest you marinate on that one.
That's the line that got me into the show.
Is it?
Is it?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of clips from that particular episode that's what really sold me on needing to find it. I'm just glad that I could bring it to you guys.
Yep, you found a winner here. Anyway, so as we close the show out, we want to bring back an old segment called this quick save segment. And essentially this segment is the what do you want to talk about that you read in the last week randomly that you saved. It could be about anything, anyone, whatever floats your boat. So I'll go ahead and I'll kick it off with this one because Hannah gets to go last. Hannah's the last one that gets to go because I like Hannah's only for the pure fact that I eat a lot of spicy food. I do, in fairness. Eat a ton of spicy food, especially in Texas. Except for here you go. Here's a side story. Here, let me tell you a bigger out of this one.
Are you preempting my story?
I am. I'm going to preempt your story. Maybe I should just let you go first, but I'm going to preempt your story.
Okay.
Like you can go first. Fuck it. At this point. So I'm down in Texas for work, right? And I'm down there, and the first day we go to this Tex-Mex restaurant, right? And I was like, all right, good enough.
God.
So we get in there. We get in there, and like they got salsa and chips, and their chips are really good. They're very thin, very lightly oiled, lightly salted, perfect for me. And I'm eating some chips and salsa. I order, I don't know. They had chili verde enchiladas. You get 2 of them, rice and bean. So I was like, all right, I'll take that. So I'm eating them, and I'm like, hey, you guys have any hot sauce? And they're like, Tabasco, and I'm like, that's not a hot sauce.
That's Louisiana. That's garbage.
I was like, he's like, no, you gotta. We only have this. I'm like, all right, listen, that's not hot sauce. Like that may be good for fried chicken, but that's not good for Mexican food. So I'm very confused why anybody would eat it on Mexican food. It won't even taste good.
Are you in this place in a mall?
No,
I don't understand.
No, it's just like some restaurant. Come to find out, it's like a chain restaurant, right? But I don't know. Somebody took me there from work, and they're like, "Hey, this is really good." So we get it. So get this. So we get. So they finally go, well, we have to warm up the hot sauce for you. I'm like, what? I was like, all right, whatever. If you have hot sauce, bring it out. 15 minutes later, I'm already like 3/4 of my way through the meal. She brings it out. And it's like this, it's a special like pepper salsa that they warmed up on the stove.
So not temperature hot.
Yeah, it's hot. Yeah. So I'm putting it on my food, and it's a little spicy. I'll admit that it's definitely spicier than the salsa they had. And I'm sitting there and I'm eating. She's like, was that spicy? I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's definitely not the same. So then the end of the week, I found out there's a taco truck that comes to my work, and they come at 9 a.m. every morning, unless it rains, because in Texas, when it rains, you don't go anywhere.
Wait a minute. 9 a.m. taco truck?
Oh, 9 a.m. taco truck.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
When you're in the warm areas, dude, like 11 o'clock, it's like don't go outside time.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
So yeah. So I was like, screw it. This whole week I heard about this taco truck. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go buy a tacos. And so I ordered some chorizo and some steak tacos. And the lady's like, how do you want them? I was like, I'll take everything, whatever you want to prepare them. No, I don't want them. Oh my God. Anyway, way to derail the show, buddy. And
Canadians.
It's not even a good Letter Kenny quote. Like you could at least have given me a good Letter Kenny quote if you're going to try and derail the show. So we Allegedly, yeah. So we go. So I go get my tacos. I'm like the last person in line, and the lady's like, "All right, do you like spicy?" And I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "Okay." And I'm like, "I know I'm white, but please give me some spicy food." Like. So they give me some tacos, and it comes with a jalapeno and some grilled onions. And I was like, "Can I get some salsa?" And she's like, "Do you want red or green?" I was like, "I'll take one of both." And the lady next to me is like, "You don't want the red; it's too hot." And I'm like, "Just give me the red. I don't care. I'm all for it. Whatever." At this point, screw my night, screw everybody else. So I come back inside, and everybody's eating their food because they're all on break. And they're like, "Hey, do you want our jalapenos? You said you like spicy stuff." I was like, "Sure, I'll take a grilled jalapeno. Screw that." So I
That's
got
cool.
like 2 of them from people.
Are they just like on the stem, just a grilled?
Oh yeah, just
jalapeno
like
flip?
an actual grilled
Yes.
jalapeno.
Yeah,
Like,
seeds in and all.
oh, seeds in and all. And I was like, that's a Texas size 10-4 there. Hand it over. So I eat one, and I'm eating it with a taco, and the chorizo's a little spicy. And I put a little bit of that red sauce on there. I was like, oh, this is kind of spicy, but I didn't know if it was the red sauce or the jalapeno, So the next taco I eat, I don't put any jalapeno, just the red sauce. I was like, okay, so it's definitely the red sauce. It's spicy. All right, they're fair. And the guy goes, it's just, I eat spicy food all the time. And I'm like, okay, well, why do you have a quesadilla there? And why did you give me your jalapeno? He's like, oh, because the jalapenos don't taste good. And I was like, and the salsa doesn't taste good? He's like, no, I don't like any of their salsas. They taste too bitter for me. I was like, it's because it's spicy, because it's like authentically spicy. It's habanero. It's like it got to be because it's an Ornish red. It has to have habaneros in it. Like it has to. It's definitely some spicy shit. So the third taco I save, right? I'm like, all right, I'll come back to this. This was a little spicy. I come back. I eat another jalapeno and some of the grilled onions. And then about an hour later, I put the rest of the salsa on the taco and I eat it. And then I eat the third jalapeno with it. Well, that was a mistake. And by about 7:00 at night, that was 100% a mistake because I spent a lot of time in the bathroom getting rid of the jalapenos and the spicy salsa.
Dude, so I don't know if this is like everybody else's issue, but like I've never been just like eating something spicy and then have it just like turn into like an intestinal problem. Like I don't know. I people are just like, oh, I ate this thing and it just turned into a nightmare. I've never had that. The only thing that ever changes anything is like a cold or a flu of some kind. And anyway, so like the spiciness and stuff like that, like there's only one thing I've ever eaten in my entire life, and it is it's Thai food, and it's right on Byron Center by the hospital of M6. There's a hospital out there, and there's a Thai food place just in the whatever mess there, and they were like, do you want hot? And I was like, well, what are your like mild, medium, hot, 1 through 10? How do you guys do it? She's like, she said there's mild, medium, hot, and extra hot. I was like, oh, let's try the extra hot. And she's like, are you sure? Whenever an Asian person is like, are you sure, Mr. White guy? And I'm like, okay, let's do this. It's the only time in my life I ever had to stop eating a dish. I have never made it halfway through a dish when I was like, I can't, not because I was full. I was just like, I'm done. I have to go home. I have to rest. I probably needed to sleep for a little while. It was insane. My ears were sweating. It was like water in my hearing aids. It was insane. And so like, that's the only time in my life, besides the only time that I ever had any Carolina Reapers, that was like, yeah, this is too much. But so you're
made of spare parts there, buddy.
So this is just going to bring into mind. So my quick save is long intro is eating hot peppers at least 4 times a week is at least a 23% reduction in all cause mortality risk. This is a 22,811 person study. It fits other studies in China. It had 487,375 people, and another study in the U.S. had 16,179. It shows that capsaicin, which is the component in peppers that makes them hot, may reduce the risk of death overall and make you just genuinely make you a healthier person. It's an inverse article, and I have there's a link included, but essentially what it is that they're not entirely certain. It's correlation causation situation here, but the correlation seems to be that eating hot peppers, eating hot foods, eating capsaicin, eating things that just give you a little bit of bang to your buck will potentially help you live a little bit longer, which is good because I'm horrible to my body, and capsaicin maybe making you live longer, which is kind of like I don't know, a nice trade-off. But this year, if I can manage to do it, I am challenging you right now, everybody on this panel, is that I am going to be growing Carolina Reapers again this year. And if we do, it doesn't have to be a pepper challenge, but it'll be like some kind of food challenge, something that I'll send you guys or whatever, and we'll try it. I don't know. Like,
I don't know. Get off your cross. We need the wood. Man.
But if if it's something that, if we can get enough money in from some people for like a charitable donation or something, I'm willing to. I will
100% do that. We'll do a special episode where we eat it on air.
I'm willing to do a full pepper on air But if the other guys want to do something a little bit lesser or something, because
Something a little less masochistic. Yeah, I'm down for that.
yeah. But so like I made ghost chili jam. We eat the world's hottest peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's
Why do you
good,
hate
man.
yourself?
Now,
Dude.
Who hurt you?
hold on, Hannah. I want to go back to your article a minute, and then we gotta keep moving on because we're gonna be here all night. If otherwise, it's getting late. In that article, it states that people who eat spicier food every day were more likely to have worse health habits in general, like smoking and alcohol. But the relationship between spicy
correlation
food
is weird.
and the low risk of death was stronger in those that didn't drink. Like, so it's like you eat spicy food, you drink. That's me, right? I'm not going to quit drinking, and I drink while I eat spicy food most of the time, not at work. But like my father, on the other hand, eats spicy food and doesn't drink. We'll see who lives longer.
Correlation causation thing. So it's not clear in any way. It's because there are other variables that are known health hazards that aren't considered in there. So I thought it was pretty cool. And if it's anything, it's a reason why I can keep eating hot peppers. And much to my family's chagrin, I can pour hot ghost chili sauce all over everything that I own because that's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks.
I'm excited by it too.
I got a brand new like a hot jackass sauce or something. I don't know. It's basically just ghost chili distillate, and I add it to all the salsas and stuff that they say they're medium or they're hot, and they're not because they're failures. And
I need a training program for this because I don't do spicy at all.
Really?
No.
Just dump into some Thai food and just go medium to like start off at 0 or mild and work your way up, and they'll break you in. Like a pad Thai, just a peanut dish is a good way to start.
Make sure you get a 3 out of 10. That's a good starting point.
See, I'm not a huge fan of spicy either. Like I'll eat a little bit of spice. Like my parents had this Jamaican jerk recipe that they appropriated.
Oh yes,
and
yes.
I actually don't get me wrong. I had to have a couple of glasses of milk with it to get it all down. But at the end of the day, it was pretty tasty. But last night I tried to have tikka masala because the place we went no longer offers the butter chicken that I like.
So Curry Burns of Canada.
And I got through part of it. Like I ate all the chicken, I ate a good chunk of the rice, but my wife, who I already sent your article to her because I know it'll make her happy. My wife is convinced that if it does not burn, it's not good.
I kind of agree with her on that one.
But she
it's
loves
the best way to
spicy.
keep squirrels from eating this bird seed that you have on your deck too, because
Exactly.
Squirrels have the receptor for capsaicin, but birds don't. So the birds will eat it, and they're like, "This is great," and the squirrels are like, "Oh my god, my face is on fire!" Much like Boyce and Keith here.
They're
the squirrels of the group.
Deep in and just do it because I'm that kind of dumbass that I'm like, you know what? I've never done A, B, or C. I think I'll do Z.
You better stomp the brakes.
Don't
buddy.
get me wrong. Like I'll eat when I eat jalapenos, I don't really chew them. I just kind of swallow them whole because I'm like, I don't want that unpleasant burning in my mouth. I'll just down the hatch and away it goes. But I don't understand the appeal. But it really, really hurts me to know that there's a study saying that it could actually help you live longer. Because I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah. I don't know.
So
Tanner, what's your quick save?
My quick save is my story. That's my quick save, buddy. I'm giving you that as my quick save for the week. That was my little story. Except for, I
was just saying, oh, cool.
The other part of that same night is at night we went to a barbecue restaurant, and it's like a meat market style restaurant. It's weird. You walk in and they're like, you buy brisket by the pound. And they had this baked potato, and I've been trying to eat less carbs because I like to drink. But there's this baked potato, and then they chop brisket up on top of it. And they're like, "Do you want sour cream?" And I'm like, "No, just put extra brisket. Just give me butter, salt, pepper, and brisket. That's all I want." And they're like,
"Enough for me."
Really? And I was like, "Can I have the jalapeno sausage?" And they're like, "Yeah, you know it's spicy, right?" And I'm like, "I don't." Just give me this. Just give me the sausage.
Jalapeno is like variable from 1,000 to 10,000 Scovilles. Like that is like.
Well, get this. I ate the sausage. It was not spicy. It was not, especially compared to the one I ate earlier.
Especially if you seed a jalapeno. It's just, I don't know. It's flavor, but it's not spicy.
Yeah, it's not.
I
put hot sauce. Well, I didn't get to put hot sauce. I had to put their spicier barbecue sauce on it because, again, they didn't have anything but Louisianaville hot sauce, and I just want to be like, this is not hot sauce. This is like low grade hex.
Cayenne pepper is really good, but cayenne pepper and vinegar is like the go-to for just about everything. That's the Louisiana sauce. That's Tabasco.
I'll eat it on fried chicken. Don't get me wrong, but I would prefer a spicier sauce than that. So, boys, what's your quick save of the week?
My quick save's about this fear mongering about the coronavirus. They're making it sound like we're all gonna die.
We might.
It's we're all gonna die.
We aren't.
It's not from coronavirus. It's just like the coronavirus. First of all, there's not enough information to make it pandemic fear. But there's it says that it's just as contagious as the cold, and it's just as easy to prevent. It's through the mucous membrane, through coughing and sneezing. Just wash your hands, and cover your mouth.
Like SARS.
Yeah, it's just it is an off show.
Cover your face hole.
SARS and MER. Your face hole. What I can't remember. MER was like the bird flu.
Avian flu.
No, it's like the MER.
H1N1.
Nope. But anyway, the article says MER. Some other shit over in Asia. Another flu of some sort that branched off from there in the article. But I mean, it's people are.
Oh, it might have been MRSA.
Well, that's a resistant. Yeah. But it just shows how the all diseases mutate every season. This one's just a little more aggressive. They've had like 14 deaths out of, I can't remember how many there was total cases, but it's like less than 2% mortality rate, which isn't very high. So there's no need to really get too crazy and be like, I'm not going to go out in public for 3 weeks, or stuff like that. Where they actually shut down the schools here last winter for a week because of the flu was so bad. There's like 40% teacher and student ratio. That makes sense to shut some shit down, not because of 4 deaths in Asia and 2 people have it in the Midwest. Like all I hear about is people freaking out. And there's some science here that shows you, even if it is what these statistics are true, and this is what it continues to be, not some sudden spike in rapid deaths or something, where it's just not worth freaking out about. It's just like the bird flu. They thought the world was going to die and end. But we'll see what happens in Europe, because Europe got a whole lot more exposure than we did. That a couple thousand, I think that was said. You said, Hannah, that got out.
Yeah, there's 2,000 people out of the 5,000 of people that they got out of Wuhan before the complete shutdown is what I read. Yeah. One of the things that I thought was really crazy is, I don't know if you guys heard about this. There is a level 4 biotech experimental lab in Wuhan that it's freaky. It's like
kind of thing.
Yeah, one of those kind of like
Raccoon City.
We do viral testing things, and there's a bunch of people that are worried that like something got away out of the Chinese hands, but I'm hoping that's not the case. And this is just like a mutated growth from SARS or something. But I don't think it's something to panic about. But everybody definitely needs to be like just overly conscious about just cleaning all your bits. Clean all the parts.
All the bits. What's so funny, because this is getting so much coverage, yet the second largest Ebola outbreak at the end of last year, did anybody hear about that? Did
any mainstream media?
Exactly.
I did.
Politics. Well, it's because you go a little bit above and beyond, but a big part of the reason why a lot of
those people are on color for mainstream media,
because it wasn't white people or somebody that we're trying to make look bad in the media because they don't have oil or whatever.
Or they stopped letting us have access to whatever resource.
Right. From them. They stopped letting us exploit them or something.
Like a 3-knuckler.
Ooh. Burn.
All right.
All right. So
take us into the ether here.
Okay. So, I violated my a New Year's resolution that I made years ago to have no New Year's resolutions, that if I was ever going to make any sort of great character change, it was just going to be because I felt the need to make that change. Well, one of the current things that I'm working on doing is increasing my organizational skills, planners, journals, etc., etc. So what I got myself into is this thing called bullet journaling. Now, for those of you who are watching, and I think there's one of you, you can see this in my hand. It's really small. It's 250 pages. There's a bullet journal method that goes with it that you can find. I got into it because I really appreciated the fact that it's completely customizable. You can absolutely make it all of your own. And as somebody who is diagnosed ADHD, the ability to kind of have the control over it, yet it's also providing structure, is just absolutely above and beyond. I mean, I've only had it for a little bit here, but I have not put it down. Like, it goes with me everywhere. It goes in my bag when I go to work. It sits on my desk pretty much all day. I'll write in it as the day goes on. I'll write it in at the end of the day. I'll take a look at it at the beginning of the day and all throughout the day. So as somebody who has absolutely zilch for attention span, something like this has been absolutely phenomenal help. So if you're somebody who struggles with organization, you're looking to get something, it may not work for you as well as it works for me, but I think it's something that's worth a shot, worth a quick look.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Bullet journaling, you don't need to buy their specific book like the one that I've got. It's just the first 2 pages are just for a table of contents, and then the next 250 pages are literally just like the dotted grid paper, and that's it. So
cool.
If that's something that appeals to you, I got mine at my local bookstore. I'm sure you could get it at a bookstore or pretty much anywhere where they sell stationery. It's something worth checking out. There's a lot of great information about it. They have a website, bulletjournal.com, or you can follow their YouTube videos, kind of get an idea for the system, or you can just completely invent your own system. And that's a wrap.
There you go. Well, that's what I appreciate about you, buddy.
That's what you appreciate about me.
It is.
Why don't we take about 10 to 15% off of there, Squirrely Tanner?
There you go. If you've been watching this, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are planning to bring the quick save segment back each week. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode from Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all again for joining us. If you would like, you can support us at the link at the bottom of the page or in the description. Head over to Spreaker, and you're welcome to join our Patreon account or subscribe to the show. Either which way, thank you all so much, and have an amazing squirrely night. Have a good night, everyone. And before we stop broadcasting,
hello.
Yeah, I have one more thing. Because there was one broadcasting.
There was one thing that I wanted to say.
For those that are checking out on Facebook tonight and on YouTube.
Spreaker.
Or Spreaker.
What?
What's going on?
Spreaker. I cut Spreaker off.
Nothing better than a fart. Except kids falling off bikes, maybe. Fuck, I could watch kids fall off bikes all day. I don't give a shit about it.
Geo-stamping fart's a good idea. Of course it is. Popcorn fart location movie theater. That's information Zeiss wants to know. No. Why not? Because it's too complicated. It's like algebra. Why you gotta put numbers and letters together? Why can't you just go fuck yourself?
No, I can do better. I wants to go again.
No, I think you should keep it. No one likes a part that sounds too staged.
You wanna know what? He's right. It's like that person who just happens to have burst out laughing in every single group photo they're in. Like the camera just happened to catch that magic moment in every single one. It's like, say cheese.
There you go, folks.
And
if you...
Is that the guy from My Chemical Romance?
No.
Just looks that way.
It looks really close to it.
That's the point. Anyway, appreciate the Canadian culture. Thank you all. Have an amazing night.